Hey guys, welcome back to Seller Sessions. Today, for the first time, I bring in John Lee. Hey John, how you doing?
Good. Hey, Danny. Thanks for having me on.
It's a pleasure. So do you want to give the audience a bit of background on yourself and where you're from, etc.?
Sure. So my name is John. I'm a co-founder of PickFu, based in the US. If you haven't heard of PickFu, it's a kind of like a quick instant focus group tool. We have a panel of 10,000 US-based consumers. If you're selling anything, you can come on, ask questions of your target audience, and really quickly you can get feedback on anything about your product. And you can use that feedback to help you in sourcing, product creation, split testing, listings, basically anywhere along your selling journey.
Yeah, that makes sense. And the key thing about testing is setting up the right foundation, isn't it?
For
Knowing
sure.
what to test and, because obviously time is of the essence as well. And you've done a huge amount of testing and so is your user base. And you come to conclusions of some really good ideas of what to test so that you can maximize your return on test investment, if you like. So why don't you take it away to talk about some of the data, give us some backstory to it, and then go into some of the best things sellers can test.
Sure. Yeah. So PickFu's been relatively new in the e-commerce space, but last year we saw a really big pickup of sellers using it. In 2019, we had sellers do over 10,000 polls on PickFu. We've gotten almost over 500,000 responses for those polls. So we've definitely seen a number of trends in the ways that sellers test and what they test. A lot of the polls we've seen are doing listing optimization and generally Amazon listing optimization. We do have some clever sellers doing product ideation and product sourcing stuff. But for today, we'll talk about sort of the listing optimizations. If you're already selling something on Amazon, here are the things that you might want to consider testing, right? Obviously, like everyone says, the most important thing is the image, because that's the thing that's going to get you the click. First, it's going to pique the consumer's interest from the search results. So you want a good image in your search results. That's going to get you the click, up your click-through rate into your listing. And even when it's in your listing, what we've seen is that having the right image can make a 2 or 3x difference in the sales, even holding everything else constant. So for today, I can talk about a couple of different trends and tests that we've seen for images, and some best practices that we've seen that might be able to help sellers out there at least try it out with their listings. Right?
Sounds good. Yeah. So let's get into that. Like,
yeah,
testing images. Yeah. So obviously it's a form of split testing, if you like. But if you're testing on Amazon, it's basically almost like parallel testing. You're 24 hours on, 24 hours off, 24 hours. You'll have a different approach. But fundamentally, what are the key things you've seen working, and what should you test? What should you look for in your images?
Sure thing. So taking a step back, caveat, these guidelines aren't going to work for everyone. They're not, every single case is different, but these are the trends that we've seen. So in the general case for images, what we've seen is that, number one, you should use as much of the canvas space as possible. So all things considered equal, a tiny little product with a lot of white space around it versus a more zoomed in shot of the product. Generally, the zoomed in shot will win 9 times out of 10, at least for the polls that we've seen, and for some of the results that we've heard from our sellers when they apply it live on Amazon. Another thing that helps a lot is when you can add text where you can. So whether this can be both on the packaging or on the label, add informative text, or you have a lot of images where you can do sort of little text callouts along the sides or the borders of the images in the spare white space. That works really well. If your product has packaging, you should consider testing. Showing packaging as well as your product. It may not always work, but you might see we've seen some pretty interesting results with that. And deriving from that, what we've seen is that generally people want to see what they're getting. So packaging kind of falls into that, and it falls into that domain where, you know, you're not, let's say you're selling nutritional supplements, you have a bottle. People like to see the packaging as well. It provides, from what we've seen with the comments from our polls, the respondents will say that, it gives them a better sense of what they're getting for their money. It can, if you have a good brand and a good design,
perceived value as well, increasing perceived value.
Much more perceived value, right? Yeah, you're showing a lot more of what that customer is going to be spending their money on.
It's against terms of service, but in terms of main image, what about props? Have you seen any big uplift in props as well?
Yes, it depends on the product.
Yeah,
if you have a complicated product, if you're showing like, let's say it's like a telephone stand for like a selfie stick or a gimbal to do selfie shots with your phone. Complicated products generally benefit from sort of demonstration shots.
Yeah.
So show a person using it. For example, we had a case where someone was selling exercise bands, and they were trying to figure out, what main image do I use? Do I use one with just a nicely done photograph of a pile of exercise bands, or one where there's an actual ballerina in there showing the exercise band being used? And that one crushed it. Definitely won hands down.
I mean, that's obviously normally it's a white background. You can have the packaging in. Props are very by the by what you can have in there, but you're right.
Yeah.
And we've seen this, haven't we? Especially in congested categories, that people will use, you look at an array of images and they all look the same. And if someone adds what I call a lifestyle substance to it, even though it's against terms of service. And even Amazon's does it. I've seen Amazon Basics run non-compliant first images. That are like lifestyle as well. So
so you got to see what you're going to be able to do in your category and with your product. If you have a bundle, what we've seen is that if you have a bundle or you're selling a collection of, let's say, a package of ice wraps or a bunch of kids balloons, definitely show everything that the customer is going to get. So if you're selling 5 ice wraps, have a picture of 5 ice wraps. Don't just show them stacked up together. Like, really spread them apart. Take up that white space. Show the buyer what they're getting, and make sure that it's organized. So it's not just a jumble, not just a pile of balloons, but actually balloons all spread out. Those work really well.
Yeah. What about other ideas? Like, even before pre-stage of launching, do you get any of your clients that are testing samples, for instance? They'll get samples sent from different factories and go, which one do you prefer, this one or this one?
For sure.
Or they've had the product mocked up, and making a decision. Do you want to talk me through some of that? And also asking the right questions, isn't it? Because like, part of testing, to get this cumulative feedback that you need from people, you have to find the right way of asking the right question, or the test doesn't deliver, if that makes sense.
It's less valid, correct.
Yeah. So how do you do that? It's like a closed question. What's the structure there to asking the right questions for feedback?
So generally, we suggest that when you're asking, so if you're just split testing on Amazon, you don't get to ask a question, right? You're just going based on customer behavior. On PickFu, because you do get to ask a question of your target audience, we generally suggest that you help them frame their reference, like give them a little bit of context and then ask them directly. So for example, if you were shopping on Amazon, which product would you more likely buy, right? That puts them in the frame of mind that this is going to be something on Amazon, and then gives them something to react to. Now, towards your question about product sourcing and working with different suppliers, we've definitely seen our customers, let's say, selling a tea kettle, where they'll have 4 different shapes and styles of tea kettles from different suppliers that they haven't put in a purchase order for because they're just trying to decide. So they'll take those images, put them up on PickFu, and if they know their target audience, let's say females making over 100K, they can go in and target only female Amazon Prime members, females making only 100K, and ask them, of these 4 tea kettles, which one would you rather buy and why? And so our respondents will vote, and then they'll also give an explanation. And from that point, you can read those explanations and understand, well, this tea kettle was more popular because of maybe its shape. This one more popular maybe because of its because of the features that it was offering. So at least you can get a directional idea of which product you want to pursue.
Well, it also gives you a pre-definition of some of the products that you should launch in terms of variations. You know, like normally you go, okay, I'm going to launch a product with variations. You run PPC on it to test, to find out what works. And eventually down the line, you know that what you're going to reorder and some will just drop off a cliff.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
If you can do that pre-test and say you got 4 to 6 variations, I know that no one's going to launch with that many because of the volume and stuff. But let's just say even down to 3, then if you get down to 3 and you know that 2 of them is a lost leader or one of them just doesn't perform, then obviously that can have good impact in terms of you will then use the money that you would have done on that 3rd variation just to invest in the other 2 or put it in the background in terms of cash flow for next time you re-up, you know?
Yeah, or for sure. Or if you're working with a supplier, let's say you're selling notebooks, you only have enough money to pick one variation, and there's different colors to pick. This is a great way of getting sort of that feedback beforehand to figure out which color has the best chance of being the best selling color. And you want to make sure that you stock that variation versus some other one where you might be losing money. Yeah.
Another thing I'd like to ask about is how men test compared to women tests. So what have you seen in terms of when men are testing versus when women are testing on the platform as well?
Yeah, we've seen, we're undergoing a study right now to look through our data from last year to try to get you more information about men versus women. But some of the basic things that we've seen, I think women, they'll ask similar questions, but I think we have seen women work more on branding. Yeah. Like spending more time to make sure that the branding and the impact and emotional appeal of the branding is dialed in before moving on to their products and the next thing. I mean, not to say that we haven't seen that from men as well, but that's something that we've noticed. Yeah. And at the same time, I think we've seen some of our customers, I would hate to say a generalization that men only look at the numbers and women only look at the words.
Yeah, no, that would be generalizing, but you wouldn't be far from the truth in some cases. That would some cases to be expected of, you know.
Right.
Because you know, like just in general, like women will have a softer tone towards stuff. They have a better eye for detail for things. For sure, they'll see things that guys don't see. You know, people are different. Yeah. So
yeah, exactly. And so the sort of towards this, there was a really interesting poll we had where I don't know what kind of seller. I don't know if the seller was male or female, but they were selling a waist support band for exercising, and they were trying to figure out 2 main images, and one had a really sexy image, you know, showing a lot of skin with the product in use, and the other was sort of more modest, covered, and so on. Now, they posted it to a general audience. They did a general audience poll of, I think, 50 or 100 people. So a mix of men and women. And the one that showed the more skin actually won. But when you when you actually looked at the results and broke it down by male and female, the vast majority of women preferred the more modest one. Yes. And if you actually looked at the comments, what it would say was, my body doesn't look like that. So why would I, like that?
Well, yeah.
Why would I buy something that doesn't reflect me? Why would I buy something that, makes me feel uncomfortable or something? Right. Yeah. So,
I mean, from my point of view, like and this is an observation, I find that women are far more superior at branding than men. From what I've seen.
That's what it seems like. Yeah.
Yeah. Like that's from the polls we've seen. Touch, that detail, there's more care taken over it, if that makes sense. Because I think with guys, we're just ready to rush on and get on with other things. But I do see that there's a slower pace. Women tend to take more detailed orientated when it comes to the branding to get that right as well.
Yeah, and we work with a lot of different sort of Amazon specialists and stuff, and we're a mix of men and women. And for sure, in our conversations with the female Amazon experts, they're all about branding. They're always pushing their clients to get the branding right, get the packaging right, get the feeling right. And we don't hear that as much on the male side.
Yeah. Guys,
it's a different approach.
Talking about the feeling of their products, don't you?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah. The guys will usually just talk and say like, okay, well, we need to run these 10 steps, and these, we need
what's the
this
numbers
outcome
on
from
that?
step 1, outcome from step 2, and so on.
Yeah. Totally.
So
cool. And talk to me about some of the most surprising tests. What I find about testing is, like, even with the agency and everything else, you have an opinion on something and I always get it wrong. Do you have that feeling as well? You run tests, you go, this is the one, and it never is. It just spurs out these very odd results.
At this point, I try to suppress my opinions because it feels like they're always wrong. To be honest, we built PickFu for ourselves. We were running a separate business, and it was me and my co-founder Justin. And our background is not in design. Our background is not, our background is we're design and colorblind. So, but from a technical perspective, what we did was we wanted to build a feedback platform so that we can get other people's opinions. And they have always proved us wrong. We run tests all the time as we're doing our own collateral, as we're doing like our marketing stuff, and things that I think are completely fine. We'll find really good feedback telling us exactly why it's not the way to go. So it's really sort of that qualitative feedback from unbiased people that get you to really think in a different way about the problem that you're trying to solve. And it's pretty insightful usually.
Cool. So let's talk a couple of key takeaways before we go. So when testing product images, use the packaging, use the whole of the white space, especially because of mobile and stuff. It looks stupid on mobile, What are other key features of testing with images as well?
If you're selling nutritional supplements, which we see a lot of, make sure the label is very clear and conveys a lot of information. Yeah. And show both sides of the label.
Yeah.
If you have a bottle of nutritional supplements like pills or powder, make sure that bottle is full. Yeah. Like it's a thing, it's a small detail, but it's important. If you can if you have attractive packaging, make sure it fits there.
You made a special point there, attractive packaging. Would you say it works against you? Like, you don't want to put some horrible looking brown box with just like a little sticker on the background, Right,
exactly. And that's why these are not hard and fast rules. It's something for whoever is selling to test out for themselves. But at least these are factors that we've seen make a difference. Like, we just encourage that everyone should test, right? Like, you can't afford not to test, whether you use us or someone else or any other method. Make sure to test, because you need to make data. Like, it's competitive out there, so you need to make data-driven decisions. Yeah,
makes total sense. Cool. What's the best way people can reach out to you? Ask, use your service, ask you questions, etc. Email, website.
Sure thing. So PickFu, you can find PickFu on the web, pickfu.com. My name's John. You can email me. I'm John at PickFu. We are pretty open with our customer service and trying to respond to everyone who gets to us. So happy to answer any further questions if your audience has them.
Excellent. Okay, John, thanks for joining us. Guys, thank you for joining us. If this is your first time, don't forget to hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you again in the next few days. Take care.